The verdant canopy of Nexus Prime stretched endlessly toward the horizon, a sea of emerald and jade swaying beneath the purple-tinged sky. This wasn't just any forest. It was the largest known biological entity in the charted galaxy. A planet-spanning green hell that had claimed the lives of countless explorers and, more recently, refugees from the ongoing political purges. Major Mason Thorne adjusted his optical enhancers, scanning the dense undergrowth for movement. His quarry was close. He could feel it. 6 days tracking through this godforsaken jungle, enduring poisonous spores, territorial predators, and the maddening humidity that made his tactical suit cling to his skin like a second layer of epidermis. Lara Tavani, he whispered to himself, reviewing the bounty details on his wrist-mounted holodisplay. Former Verdante Special Operations, current fugitive, wanted for treason, theft of classified information, and, interesting, biological terrorism against conquered interests. The corner of his mouth twitched upward. The conquered always found creative ways to criminalize whistleblowing. Whatever Tavani had stolen must have been damning indeed to warrant the astronomical bounty on her head, dead or alive. A branch snapped in the distance, and Thorne's instincts kicked in. He moved like a shadow through the undergrowth, his footfall silent against the spongy forest floor. 20 years as a mercenary had taught him patience, precision, and the value of waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Through a gap in the foliage, he spotted her, a lithe figure with pale green skin that almost blended with the surroundings. Lara Tavani moved with the fluid grace, typical of her Verdante species. But there was an urgency to her movements that betrayed her desperation. She clutched a small metallic cylinder to her chest, undoubtedly the stolen data that had made her the most wanted, being in 3 star systems. Thorne readied his stun net launcher. The conquered wanted her alive if possible. Interrogations yielded more information than corpses. He steadied his breathing, finger hovering over the trigger, when something massive shifted in his peripheral vision. What he had mistaken for a small clearing was, in fact, not a clearing at all. The forest floor seemed to ripple and part as an enormous flytrap-like structure, easily 20 meters across, began to unfold from its dormant state. Vivid crimson and violet hues lined the interior of its maw, exuding a sickly sweet aroma that wafted through the humid air. Lara, too focused on checking her navigation device, failed to notice the danger. Thorne hesitated. His mission parameters were clear: capture the target, retrieve the stolen data, collect payment. Nothing in those instructions involved saving her from the local flora. It happened in seconds. The plant's trigger hairs detected Lara's movement, and with astonishing speed for something so massive, the enormous petals snapped upward. She screamed, a sound that froze Thorne's blood, as the plant engulfed her lower body. Only her torso, arms, and head remained visible. Her expression contorted in pain and terror as the plant's digestive enzymes began their work. "Shit," Thorne muttered, lowering his weapon. His contract didn't specify what condition the target needed to be in. Just that positive identification of her DNA was required. He could simply wait for the plant to finish its meal, collect a tissue sample, and be off-world by nightfall. Lara's screams intensified, her green skin paling to an almost translucent white as the pain overwhelmed her. The data cylinder slipped from her grasp, landing on the ground just outside the plant's maw. Something uncomfortable stirred in Thorne's chest, an emotion he'd long ago learned to suppress in his line of work. Compassion was a liability in the bounty-hunting business. Yet watching the Verdante woman struggle against her gruesome fate awakened something he thought he'd buried years ago. "This is going to cost me," he growled, unsheathing his vibro machete and charging toward the carnivorous monstrosity. The plant's outer tendrils sensed his approach, whipping toward him with surprising force. Thorne ducked and weaved, slicing through the first wave of attacks with practiced precision. The plant's fluids sprayed across his armor, immediately beginning to sizzle and corrode the protective plating. Highly acidic. Wonderful, he grunted, activating his suit's neutralizing countermeasures. He reached the main body of the plant, where Lara struggled weakly against the crushing pressure of the massive petals. Her eyes widened in surprise at the sight of him. "Human," she gasped through clenched teeth. "Why would you—" "Questions later," Thorn replied, driving his blade deep into the fleshy joint where the petals connected. The plant shuddered violently, releasing a high-pitched keening that seemed to resonate through the entire forest. He continued his assault, methodically severing the connections that held the trap closed. With a final, desperate slash, he created an opening large enough for extraction. Reaching in, he grabbed Lara under her arms and pulled. The plant's interior was slick with digestive fluids, making his grip tenuous at best. With a tremendous heave, he yanked her free, both of them tumbling backward onto the forest floor. The plant writhed in apparent agony, its severed petals flailing wildly before slowly, gradually, beginning to fold back into its dormant state. Thorn didn't wait to see if it would recover. He scooped up the data cylinder, then turned his attention to Lara. The lower half of her body was severely burned by the plant's digestive enzymes. Her clothing dissolved in patches to reveal angry red wounds on her green skin. She was conscious, but barely, her breath coming in short, pained gasps. "Why did you save me?" she managed, her large, almond-shaped eyes studying him with suspicion. Thorn hesitated. "Professional courtesy," he finally said, reaching for his medkit. "Can't collect a bounty if some overgrown salad gets to you first." Her expression hardened. "So you're Concord." "Independent contractor," he corrected, applying a neutralizing gel to her wounds. "Major Mason Thorn, at your service. Though I suspect you won't appreciate my services once we reach Concord space." Lara attempted to move, then winced in pain. "You don't understand what you're doing," she said through gritted teeth. "What I'm carrying. It's evidence. The Concord leadership is—" "Not my concern," Thorn interrupted, checking the cylinder's integrity. "Politics isn't my business. Credits are—" "And how many credits is your conscience worth, Major?" she challenged, her voice growing stronger as the medical nanites in the gel began their work. "How much to look the other way while they execute me for exposing their genocide plans?" Thorn's hands stilled momentarily. "Genocide is a strong accusation." "It's not an accusation. It's a fact." Her eyes burned with conviction. "That data contains detailed plans for the systematic elimination of my people, the Verdante. Project Defoliation, they call it. Clever name for mass murder, isn't it?" Night was falling rapidly, as it always did on Nexus Prime. The forest's bioluminescent life began to awaken, casting an ethereal blue glow over the clearing. Thorn knew they couldn't remain in the open. Night predators would be drawn to the scent of Lara's wounds and the plant's fluids. "We need shelter," he said, deliberately ignoring her claims. He'd heard every sob story imaginable from bounties trying to save their skins. "Can you walk?" Lara attempted to stand, but collapsed immediately. "Not yet," she admitted reluctantly. "The plant's toxins affect our nervous system differently than yours." With a resigned sigh, Thorn lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, though the typical Verdante hollowbone structure explained that. "I know a defensible position about half a click from here. We'll make camp, and you can try to convince me of this genocide plot while your legs remember how to work." As they moved through the increasingly luminous forest, Thorn couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just complicated his life immeasurably. The Concord didn't look kindly on contractors who fraternized with their bounties, especially those accused of treason. Yet, something about Lara's accusation nagged at him. He'd heard whispers about Concord black operations against non-human species, dismissed as conspiracy theories by mainstream media channels. They reached a small rock outcropping that formed a natural shelter against one side. Thorn activated a series of perimeter sensors, creating a defensive field that would alert them to approaching threats. He gently set Lara down against the rock wall and began assembling a temporary campsite. "You still haven't answered my question," Lara said, watching him work. "Why save me from the plant if you're just going to deliver me to a conquered execution?" Thorn paused, considering his answer carefully. "Let's call it professional curiosity. You've got half the galaxy's security forces hunting you. I want to know if the prize was worth the chase." "And the data cylinder?" He patted his secure pocket. "Insurance. You try anything, and I destroy it. Then you've got nothing to bargain with." Lara leaned her head back against the rock, her expression a mixture of pain and frustration. "You humans and your transactional worldview. Is everything a negotiation to your species?" "Says the woman offering information in exchange for freedom," Thorn countered, kindling a small, smokeless heat source for the night. A tense silence fell between them as darkness enveloped the forest completely. The bioluminescent flora cast moving shadows across their makeshift camp, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere. In the distance, the calls of nocturnal creatures echoed through the canopy, some beautiful, others chilling. "They're going to sterilize this entire planet," Lara finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just the Verdante settlements, everything. The entire ecosystem. They've discovered something here. Something the Builders left behind." Thorn frowned. The Builders were a theoretical ancient civilization whose artifacts occasionally surfaced throughout the galaxy, technology so advanced it bordered on mythical. What could possibly be valuable enough to warrant planetary genocide? "A network," Lara replied, her eyes reflecting the blue glow of the forest. "The entire planet is connected somehow. The trees, the rivers, even the atmosphere. It's all part of an integrated system. The Builders didn't terraform Nexus Prime. They grew it. And somewhere at its heart lies technology that could revolutionize interstellar travel." "Gateway technology," Thorn muttered, recognition dawning. The theoretical possibility of instantaneous travel between star systems without conventional hyperspace jumps had been the holy grail of galactic exploration for centuries. Lara nodded. "The Concord doesn't want to share. They plan to extract what they need, then destroy all evidence, including witnesses. My people have lived in harmony with Nexus Prime for generations. We're attuned to it in ways humans aren't. That's why we noticed the changes first." "Changes?" "The forest is waking up. Major. Whatever dormant systems the Builders left behind are becoming active again. And my people are caught in the middle of a power struggle we never asked to join." Thorn processed this information silently. If true, it would explain the Concord's unprecedented bounty on a single fugitive. It would also mean he was currently harboring evidence that could bring down the most powerful political entity in known space. "Get some rest," he finally said, checking his perimeter sensors one last time. "We'll continue this discussion in the morning." "And if I try to escape during the night?" Lara asked, a hint of defiance in her voice. Thorn gave her a measured look. "Then you'll discover why I'm the highest-rated bounty hunter in the Outer Rim. But somehow, I don't think you will. You need me as much as I—" He caught himself. "As much as your evidence needs protection." Lara held his gaze for a long moment before nodding slightly. "A temporary alliance, then, until morning." "Until morning," Thorn agreed, though something told him this complicated situation wouldn't resolve itself with the dawn. The night passed uneventfully, save for a brief alert when a pack of scavengers approached their perimeter, but quickly retreated when Thorn activated his suit's threat display. By morning, Lara's condition had improved significantly, the remarkable regenerative abilities of the Verdante allowing her to stand, albeit shakily. "We need to reach the Sarin River," she announced, as Thorn dismantled their camp. "There's a builder outpost there that might still be active. I can transmit the evidence through their network, bypassing Concord communications entirely." Thorn raised an eyebrow. "And I should help you with this because once the evidence is public, the bounty on my head becomes meaningless. The Concord will be too busy defending themselves against genocide charges to worry about one Verdante fugitive." She paused, studying his reaction. "And because I think you're not as mercenary as you pretend to be, Major Thorn." He scoffed, shouldering his pack. "Don't mistake professional thoroughness for moral conviction. I don't leave jobs half-finished." "Then consider your job to be delivering me to justice," Lara countered. "Just not Concord justice." The journey to the Sarin River would take them through the densest part of the Nexus jungle. As they set out, Thorn couldn't help but notice subtle changes in the forest around them. The bioluminescence that should have faded with daylight remained, pulsing in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. "The forest is watching us," Lara said, noting his observation. "It's been doing that since the excavations began. My people believe Nexus Prime is developing a form of collective consciousness, a defense mechanism against the Concord's intrusions." "You're telling me the planet is alive?" Thorn asked skeptically. "All planets with ecosystems are alive in some sense," she replied. "But Nexus Prime is more. The builders didn't just create a world, they created a neural network using organic components. We're walking through the equivalent of a giant brain." Thorn adjusted his pack uncomfortably. "That's not creepy at all." Their path took them through increasingly strange terrain. Massive fungal structures formed archways over the trail, releasing spores that glittered like diamond dust in the filtered sunlight. Trees twisted into impossible configurations, their branches occasionally reaching toward the travelers, as if curious about their presence. By midday, they reached a clearing where the ground dropped away sharply, revealing their destination, the Sarin River, a kilometer-wide torrent of dark blue water that cut through the heart of the jungle. On the opposite bank, barely visible through the mist, stood what could only be builder architecture, geometric shapes of impossible precision, overgrown with centuries of vegetation, yet still unmistakably artificial. "That's our target," Lara confirmed, pointing to the distant structures. "The outpost should contain a transmitter powerful enough to reach any connected node in the galaxy." Thorn surveyed the rushing water below with concern. "Slight problem. That's not a river we can swim across, and I don't see any bridges." Lara's eyes scanned the riverbank. "The Verdante settlements, used to harvest the giant bamboo that grows along the shores. We can construct a simple raft." "Have you forgotten the part where I'm supposedly taking you into custody? Not helping you broadcast stolen information?" She turned to face him fully, her expression serious. "You've had multiple opportunities to restrain me or call for extraction. You haven't. That tells me you're at least considering the possibility that I'm telling the truth." She gestured to his pocket. "The evidence is right there. You could view it yourself if you wanted confirmation." Thorn's jaw tightened. She wasn't wrong. He'd been uncharacteristically lenient with his quarry. Professional curiosity, he told himself. Nothing more. "Fine," he conceded. "We build a raft, but I reserve the right to change my mind about this entire arrangement." They spent the next several hours harvesting the bamboo-like plants that grew along the riverbank. The stalks were remarkably strong, yet flexible, ideal for raft construction. As they worked, Thorn found himself impressed by Lara's knowledge and resourcefulness. Despite her scholarly appearance, she clearly possessed practical survival skills and a determined resilience. "You're not what I expected from a data thief," he commented, as they bound the last of the stalks together with vines. "And you're not what I expected from a bounty hunter," she replied, with the hint of a smile. "I anticipated more gratuitous violence and less rescue from carnivorous plants." The completed raft was crude, but serviceable. They pushed it into the water, both climbing aboard quickly as the current began to carry them toward the center of the river. Thorn used a long pole to steer, keeping them aimed toward the distant builder structures. Halfway across, the water around their raft began to churn ominously. Lara tensed, her eyes wide with recognition. "Sarin eels," she whispered urgently. "They hunt in groups and can capsize boats much larger than this." As if on cue, a massive serpentine form breached the surface nearby, its iridescent scales flashing purple and blue in the sunlight. At least 5 meters long, with multiple rows of backward-facing teeth. The creature's gaping maw could easily engulf half their raft in a single bite. "Any suggestions?" Thorn asked, reaching for his weapon. "Don't shoot," Lara warned. "The blood will attract every predator for kilometers. We need to—" Her words were cut short as something massive slammed into the underside of their raft, nearly sending them both overboard. Thorn caught Lara's arm, steadying her as the raft tilted precariously. "We need to work together," she continued, regaining her balance. "The raft's our only chance. If we go into the water, we're finished." More of the eel-like creatures surfaced around them, creating an undulating barrier between their fragile craft and the safety of the shore. Thorn could see the intelligence in their movements. They were coordinating, herding the raft toward a section of rapids where it would likely break apart. "I'll keep us stable," he decided, planting the pole firmly against the riverbed. "You find us a way through." Lara nodded, her eyes scanning the water intently. After a moment of concentration, she began to guide him with hand signals. Left, right, hold position, navigating them through the hunting pattern of the eels with uncanny precision. "How are you predicting their movements?" Thorn asked, as they narrowly avoided another attack. "Verdante sensory perception," she explained tersely. "We can detect bioelectric fields. These creatures use electrical pulses to coordinate. I can feel them planning." Together, they executed a series of maneuvers that gradually brought them closer to the shore. The eels grew increasingly agitated as their prey approached escape, launching a final, coordinated assault. 3 massive bodies hit the raft simultaneously from different angles, splintering the bamboo platform. "Jump!" Lara shouted as the raft disintegrated beneath them. They leaped toward the shoreline, the current threatening to drag them back into the depths where the predators waited. Thorn felt something massive brush against his legs, then a sharp pain as teeth grazed his calf. With desperate strokes, he pulled himself toward the shallows, one hand firmly gripping Lara's wrist. They collapsed onto the muddy bank, gasping for breath as the eels thrashed in frustration at the river's edge before retreating into deeper water. "That," Thorn panted, checking his injured leg, "was too close." Lara nodded in agreement, water dripping from her slender form. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You could have let go, saved yourself more easily." He shrugged, applying a quick seal to his wound. "Professional thoroughness, remember? Can't collect a bounty on a drowned fugitive." "Right," she said, not bothering to hide her skepticism. "Professional thoroughness." They rested briefly before approaching the builder structures that loomed above them. Up close, the architectural precision was even more apparent. Every angle mathematically perfect. Every surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different perspectives. "The entrance should be on the eastern face," Lara said, running her hand reverently along one of the walls. "These structures have stood for at least 50,000 years, possibly much longer." "What makes you think anything inside will still be operational?" Thorn asked, following her lead. "Builder technology doesn't degrade like ours. They used principles we're only beginning to understand. Quantum-locked materials, self-repairing circuits. The Conquered has been trying to reverse-engineer artifacts for decades with limited success. They circled the primary structure until they found what appeared to be an entrance, a triangular opening that pulsed with faint blue light. Lara approached it confidently, placing her palm against a panel beside the doorway. To Thorn's amazement, The panel illuminated in response to her touch, and the triangular portal widened silently. "How did you do that?" he asked, suddenly suspicious. Lara hesitated before answering. "The builders designed their technology to respond to specific genetic markers. My people. We've discovered that Verdante DNA contains sequences compatible with builder interfaces. It's one of the reasons the Concord sees us as valuable test subjects rather than equal citizens." She stepped through the doorway, and after a moment's hesitation, Thorn followed. The interior was surprisingly well preserved, illuminated by the same soft blue light that had outlined the entrance. Geometric patterns covered the walls, floor, and ceiling, occasionally shifting and realigning themselves as if the entire structure was reconfiguring based on their presence. "This way," Lara said with unexpected certainty, leading them down a corridor that sloped gently downward. "The transmission hub should be in the central chamber." "You seem to know your way around awfully well for someone who's never been here before," Thorn observed, his hand resting on his weapon. "I told you, my people are connected to this place. It's communicating with me, showing me the path." Thorn frowned but continued following. The corridor eventually opened into a vast circular chamber, dominated by a central column that stretched from floor to ceiling. The column pulsed with energy, bands of light traveling up and down its length in complex patterns. "The Nexus Point," Lara breathed, approaching the column with reverence. "It's still active after all this time." She removed the data cylinder from Thorn's pocket. He was too surprised by her boldness to stop her, and approached the column. "Wait," Thorn said, stepping forward. "Before you do whatever you're planning to do, I want to see this evidence myself. If I'm going to be complicit in treason against the Concord, I should know exactly what I'm involving myself in." Lara studied him for a moment, then nodded. She twisted the cylinder, revealing a holographic projector. With a few deft movements, she activated the device, and the air between them filled with images, documents, and video recordings. Thorn watched in growing horror as the evidence unfolded before him. Detailed plans for the systematic exploitation and eventual destruction of Nexus Prime. Biological weapons designed specifically to target Verdante physiology. Mining operations that would effectively gut the planet's ecosystem. Most damning of all were recorded conversations between Admiral Harkness, the head of Concord Security, and various corporate interests, explicitly discussing the removal of indigenous complications and the total resource extraction that would follow. "This can't be sanctioned by the full Concord Council," Thorn said, his voice hollow as the presentation ended. "They're a corrupt bureaucracy, sure, but planetary genocide?" "The Council doesn't know," Lara confirmed. "That's why this evidence needs to reach them directly, bypassing Harkness's communications blockade. Once it's public, they'll have no choice but to act, if only to save their own reputations." Before Thorn could respond, his tactical suit's proximity alerts began to sound. He activated his wrist display, cursing under his breath at what he saw. "Concord dropships," he announced grimly. "At least 3 of them, landing less than a kilometer from here. Harkness must have tracked us somehow." The river crossing, Lara realized. The disruption pattern of the eels would have been visible from orbit. She turned back to the central column, urgency in her movements. "I need to interface with the transmitter immediately. Once the data is in the network, they can't stop it from spreading." "How long will it take?" "I don't know. Minutes, maybe. The system has been dormant for millennia." Thorn checked his weapons and surveyed the chamber, his tactical mind already formulating a defense strategy. "I'll buy you time. There's only one approach to this chamber. I can bottleneck them in the corridor." Lara paused in her work, looking at him with genuine surprise. "You're helping me, officially?" "Let's just say I've decided to renegotiate my contract terms," Thorn replied with a grim smile. "Genocide wasn't in the job description." He positioned himself at the corridor entrance, setting up a series of proximity mines and preparing his most powerful weaponry, The irony wasn't lost on him. After years of working for the highest bidder, he was now preparing to defend a fugitive against his former employers. "Thorn!" Lara called from the central column, where she had somehow integrated the data cylinder into the builder technology. "Whatever happens, thank you." He nodded once, then focused on the approaching threat. His tactical display showed multiple hostiles moving rapidly toward their position. Conquered Special Forces, heavily armed and undoubtedly under orders to retrieve both Lara and the evidence by any means necessary. The first wave appeared at the far end of the corridor, their armored forms silhouetted against the blue light. Thorn didn't hesitate, detonating the outermost mines and opening fire in the ensuing confusion. The narrow passageway worked to his advantage, preventing the soldiers from utilizing their superior numbers. "Admiral Harkness sends his regards." "Major Thorn," a voice called during a brief lull in the fighting. "He's particularly disappointed in your change of allegiance. The bounty on your head now matches the Verdante woman's." "Tell Harkness he should have read the fine print," Thorn shouted back, reloading his weapon. "I don't facilitate genocide. Bad for business." The exchange of fire intensified, the ancient corridor somehow withstanding the barrage of advanced weaponry. Thorn fought with the precision and efficiency that had made him legendary in mercenary circles. But he knew it was only a matter of time before they overwhelmed his position. Behind him, Lara worked frantically at the central column, her hands moving in complex patterns over the builder interface. The column's pulsing had accelerated, the bands of light now swirling in chaotic patterns that illuminated the entire chamber. "How much longer?" Thorn called over his shoulder, ducking as a blast of energy scorched the wall above his head. "It's accepting the data," Lara replied, her voice strained with concentration. "But the transmission network it's asking for something more. A biological key of some kind." A deafening explosion rocked the corridor as the Concord forces detonated their own breaching charges. Thorn was thrown backward, his armor absorbing most of the impact, but leaving him momentarily disoriented. Through the smoke and debris, he could see armored figures advancing rapidly. "We're out of time!" he shouted, struggling to his feet and retreating toward the central chamber. Lara turned from the column, her expression a mixture of determination and fear. "There's one more thing I can try." She reached out to Thorn. "I need your hand." "My hand," he repeated, confused, but complied nonetheless, taking her slender green fingers in his own. The moment their hands connected, the column's light changed from blue to a brilliant purple. Lara placed their joined hands against the interface, and Thorn felt a strange sensation, as if something was scanning not just his physical form, but something deeper, more essential. "What's happening?" he asked, watching as the light from the column began to envelop Lara's body. "Human and Verdante," she explained, her voice taking on an otherworldly quality as the light intensified. "The builders valued diversity, symbiosis between different forms of life. They built safeguards into their most powerful technology, requiring cooperation between species to activate them fully." The chamber doors began to close automatically as the conquered forces reached the entrance. Admiral Harkness himself stepped into view, his aristocratic features contorted with rage as he realized what was happening. "Stop them!" he bellowed, raising his weapon. But it was too late. The light from the column had completely engulfed Lara, rendering her almost transparent. Her final words to Thorn seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Find me at the source." Then, in a blinding flash that temporarily overwhelmed even Thorn's tactical visor, she vanished, seemingly absorbed into the column itself. Simultaneously, every surface of the chamber erupted with the same purple light, patterns racing along the walls like electrical currents. Admiral Harkness and his forces froze in the doorway, weapons raised but momentarily stunned by the spectacle. Thorn was equally transfixed, his hand still outstretched where Lara had been standing seconds before. The light abruptly concentrated into a focused beam that shot upward through the ceiling, presumably continuing into the sky above. As it did, a shockwave of energy pulsed outward, washing over everyone in the chamber. When it reached the conquered forces, something extraordinary happened. They simply stopped. Not dead, not unconscious, but completely immobilized, as if time itself had frozen around them while leaving their consciousness intact. Harkness's eyes darted wildly in panic, but not a muscle in his body responded to his commands. Thorn, to his astonishment, remained unaffected. He approached the paralyzed admiral cautiously, waving a hand before the man's terrified eyes. What did she do? He wondered aloud, examining the frozen soldiers. Their life signs remained stable on his tactical display. They were perfectly healthy, just utterly immobilized. The central column had returned to its normal blue pulsing. But now, a small object rested at its base, the data cylinder, seemingly rejected by the system after its contents had been absorbed. Thorn retrieved it, noticing that additional data had been added to its storage capacity. A quick review confirmed his suspicions. The evidence Lara had brought, along with her transmission, had indeed been broadcast. His tactical suit was receiving confirmation signals from multiple sources across conquered space. The information was spreading exponentially through every connected system, impossible to contain or suppress. But there was something else: coordinates, embedded within the builder data structure. Coordinates to a location deep in the unexplored heart of Nexus Prime, marked simply as Source. Thorn looked back at the paralyzed Harkness, a slow smile spreading across his face. Looks like your operation has been compromised. Admiral, I'd suggest preparing a defense, but... He gestured to the man's frozen form. You seem a bit tied up at the moment. He gathered his remaining equipment and headed for the exit, pausing only briefly to address the helpless conquered officers. I don't know how long this paralysis will last, gentlemen, but I suggest reconsidering your career choices when it wears off. Genocide tends to look bad on a resume. As Thorn emerged from the builder structure, he was met with an astonishing sight. The entire forest seemed to be illuminated from within, the same purple energy that had engulfed Lara now flowing through every plant, tree, and vine as far as the eye could see. The Nexus network was awake, fully awake, and it had received Lara's message. His tactical display showed conquered ships frantically withdrawing from orbit, their communications filled with confused reports of system failures and unexplained phenomena throughout the planet. Whatever had happened in the builder outpost had triggered a planet-wide response. Consulting the coordinates from the data cylinder, Thorn set out into the transformed jungle. Finding Lara had started as a simple bounty hunt, evolved into an unlikely alliance, and now had become something else entirely. A rescue mission, perhaps, or maybe something more personal than he cared to admit. The journey to the coordinates took 3 days, during which Thorn observed remarkable changes in the forest around him. The plant life seemed to part before him, creating clear pathways where dense undergrowth had previously blocked passage. Predators that would normally consider him prey kept their distance, watching with what almost seemed like curiosity rather than hunger. Most striking of all were the builder structures that he began to encounter with increasing frequency. Not ruins overgrown with vegetation, but pristine facilities seemingly restored to full functionality by whatever awakening process Lara had triggered. Each pulsed with the same blue energy he had seen at the river outpost, creating a network of illuminated nodes throughout the jungle. On the 3rd day, he reached a massive clearing, unlike any natural formation he had ever seen. Perfectly circular, nearly 2 kilometers in diameter, the space was dominated by a colossal structure that resembled a tree and a tower simultaneously. Its trunk spiraled upward at least 500 meters, with branches extending outward at various heights. each terminating in what appeared to be transmission or reception arrays. "The source," Thorne muttered, approaching the base of the structure with appropriate caution. As he drew nearer, he noticed something unexpected. Verdante. Dozens of them, emerging from the jungle around the clearing, all moving with purpose toward the central structure. They regarded Thorne with surprise, but not hostility, some even nodding in acknowledgement as they passed. One elderly Verdante male approached him directly. "You must be Major Thorne," he said in heavily accented standard. "Lara's message spoke of you, the human who chose truth over credits." "Where is she?" Thorne asked, ignoring the characterization. "Is she alive?" The elder gestured toward the tower. "She lives, but not as before. The Builder Network accepted her as a biological key, a bridge between their dormant systems and our living world. She has become integrated." "Integrated?" Thorne repeated, a chill running down his spine. "What does that mean, exactly?" "It would be easier to show you," the elder replied. "She asked for you specifically when the connection stabilized, said you would come." Thorne followed the elder into the base of the structure, where more Verdante were gathered around a central platform similar to the column in the river outpost, but vastly larger and more complex. The entire chamber hummed with energy, the walls displaying constantly shifting patterns of light that somehow conveyed information Thorne couldn't quite grasp. "Prepare yourself," the elder warned as they approached the platform. The transition was significant. In the center of the platform, suspended in a column of gentle blue light, floated Lara, or what Lara had become. Her physical form remained recognizable, but had changed in fundamental ways. Her skin now shimmered with the same energy that flowed through the Builder technology, and patterns similar to those on the walls moved across her surface. Most strikingly, tendrils of light extended from her body, connecting to various points throughout the chamber in a complex web of energy. Her eyes opened as Thorne approached, and recognition flickered in their depths. "Mason," she said, her voice somehow both present in the room and echoing from multiple sources simultaneously. "You found me." "What happened to you?" he asked, stepping as close to the energy field as he dared. "I became what was needed," she replied, a hint of her former self emerging through the otherworldly presence she had become. The Builder Network required a conscious intelligence to direct its reactivation, a bridge between organic life and their technology. I volunteered. "Can you come back? Return to normal?" Even as he asked, Thorne realized how much he wanted the answer to be yes. Lara's expression softened. "Not completely. Not immediately. But this form is not permanent. The Builders designed their systems to serve life, not consume it. I am learning to navigate the connection, to maintain my individuality while channeling the network's power." She gestured, and the energy field around her rippled. "Already, I have accomplished what I set out to do. The evidence has reached the Concord Council. Admiral Harkness and his collaborators have been detained. The genocide has been prevented." "And Nexus Prime?" Thorne asked, looking around at the humming machinery. "The planet is now under the protection of its own defenses," Lara explained. "The Builder technology that Harkness sought to exploit has created a sanctuary that no military force can penetrate without permission. My people will be safe here." The elder stepped forward. "We owe both of you a debt that cannot be measured. The Verdante High Council has declared this region a sovereign territory, with Lara as its guardian and voice." Thorne processed this information silently. His mission, as originally conceived, was now impossible to complete. His reputation in conquered space was undoubtedly ruined. Yet standing here, witnessing the results of his choices, he felt an unfamiliar sense of rightness. "What will you do now, Mason Thorne?" Lara asked, her luminous eyes studying him intently. "Return to bounty hunting? There will be little welcome for you in conquered territories. I hadn't thought that far ahead, he admitted. Survival first, career planning second. The elder cleared his throat. There is another matter you should both be aware of. He hesitated, looking between them uncertainly. Our medical specialists have examined the data from your joining at the river outpost. The builder system recorded everything, including an unexpected biological interaction. What kind of interaction? Thorn asked, suddenly alert. When your hands joined to activate the transmission, the elder explained carefully. The system facilitated an exchange more profound than simple genetic scanning. It harmonized your DNA sequences in a way our scientists are still struggling to understand. Lara's energy field fluctuated noticeably. Elder Tavos, what are you saying? The elder's expression was a mixture of wonder and concern. You are carrying a child, Lara. A child with genetic markers from both Verdante and human lineages. Something our scientists believed impossible without extensive laboratory intervention. Thorn felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath him. A child, but we never. Physical contact was unnecessary, Elder Tavos explained. The builder system recognized compatible genetic patterns and facilitated conception as part of its revival protocol. The builders valued genetic diversity above all else. It was central to their philosophy of cosmic development. Lara's form shimmered with increased intensity, the tendrils of light connecting her to the chamber pulsing rapidly. A child, she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. A new beginning. Thorn approached the energy field, his hand hovering just outside its boundary. I don't know the first thing about being a father, he said quietly, especially not to a child who's half alien, half human, conceived by ancient technology. Few parents are ever truly prepared, Elder Tavos observed with gentle humor. But few children have ever been born with such significance, a living symbol of cooperation between our peoples and connection to the builders themselves. Lara's energy field expanded slightly, allowing Thorn's hand to penetrate its outer layer without harm. Her own hand, glowing with inner light, met his in a gentle touch that sent tingles of energy up his arm. Stay, she said simply. Help me build this sanctuary. When I have mastered this form enough to return to a more physical existence, we can face the challenges of parenthood together. And in the meantime, Thorn asked, surprised by how appealing the proposal sounded. In the meantime, Nexus Prime needs protection, she replied. The Concord Council has authorized a scientific expedition to study the builder technology, legitimately this time, with Verdante oversight. They will need security coordination from someone who understands both human and Verdante perspectives. Thorn considered the offer. It wasn't bounty hunting, but it would utilize his skills while allowing him to remain close to Lara and their improbable future child. More importantly, it felt right in a way few things in his life ever had. Security Director Thorn. He tested the title. I suppose I could adapt to a steady paycheck and slightly fewer people shooting at me. Elder Tavos smiled. Then it is settled. When you are ready, we will introduce you to the Verdante High Council and begin preparations for the Concord delegation's arrival. As the elder departed to give them privacy, Thorn turned back to Lara, still trying to process everything that had happened since he first spotted her in the jungle. Days that felt like a lifetime ago. When I took this contract, he said with a rueful shake of his head, I definitely didn't expect it to end with me becoming a father, changing allegiances, and setting up home on a semi-sentient planet. Lara's laughter rippled through the energy field, like waves of light. And I didn't expect to be rescued from a carnivorous plant by the bounty hunter sent to capture me, only to end up integrated with ancient alien technology and pregnant with an unprecedented hybrid child. Life takes unexpected turns, Thorn agreed, surprised by how at peace he felt with these dramatic changes. The builders had a saying, Lara replied, the patterns on her luminous form shifting to display symbols. Thorn couldn't read. The most significant journeys begin with steps taken in the wrong direction. Thorn smiled, his hand still connected with hers through the energy field. I think I'm finally heading the right way. 3 months later, the area surrounding the source had been transformed into a thriving research settlement, known officially as Nexus Sanctuary. Verdante dwellings constructed in harmony with the living forest stood alongside prefabricated human structures, creating an unprecedented integration of the two cultures. Thorn had adapted surprisingly well to his role as security director, establishing protocols that respected both Verdante customs and Concord regulations. His reputation as the bounty hunter who had exposed the genocide plot had spread throughout the galaxy, turning him from outlaw to reluctant hero in public opinion. Lara had gradually learned to control her connection to the Builder network, able to maintain a physical form for increasing periods, while still accessing the vast capabilities of the ancient system when needed. The pregnancy progressed normally, despite its unprecedented nature, monitored closely by both Verdante healers and human medical specialists. Today was particularly significant, the first official diplomatic reception between the newly recognized Verdante sovereign territory and the Concord Central Authority. Representatives from both governments would formally establish relations and sign research-sharing agreements that would benefit all parties. Thorn adjusted his formal uniform, a compromise between military styling and civilian dignity that reflected his unique position. "Are you sure you're up for this?" he asked Lara, who was preparing in their shared quarters. "The doctors said you should be resting more." Lara emerged, her pregnant form clothed in traditional Verdante ceremonial garments, modified to accommodate her condition. Though she appeared almost normal, faint traces of luminescence still pulsed beneath her green skin, a permanent reminder of her connection to the Builder network. "I'm carrying the first known human Verdante child," she replied with a smile. "Resting more would be sensible advice for a normal pregnancy, but there's nothing normal about our situation." Thorn placed a gentle hand on her rounded belly, feeling the now familiar flutter of movement within. "Fair point. Just don't overexert yourself. I'll handle the security concerns. You focus on the diplomatic niceties." "Agreed," Lara said, covering his hand with her own. "Though I'm more concerned about your father's arrival than any security threats." Thorn grimaced. General Thorn, his estranged father, and high-ranking Concord military officer, had requested permission to attend the ceremony, ostensibly as a military observer, but clearly to reconnect with the son he hadn't spoken to in over a decade. "He'll behave," Thorn said without much conviction. "The political stakes are too high for him to make a scene." They made their way to the reception area, a beautiful circular platform constructed around the base of the source tower. Builder technology had been integrated with contemporary design elements, creating a space that honored both the ancient past and the collaborative future they were building. The Verdante delegation arrived first, led by the High Council members who had supported Lara's mission from the beginning. They greeted Thorn with the traditional palm-to-forehead gesture of respect, an honor rarely bestowed on non-Verdante. "Security Director Thorn," Elder Tavos greeted him formally. "The Council extends its gratitude for your service to our people and to Nexus Prime itself." "The honor is mine," Thorn replied, having learned the proper ceremonial responses during his months among the Verdante. "May the forest witness our continued cooperation." The Concord delegation arrived shortly after, a mix of political representatives, scientific specialists, and military observers. Among them, General Thorn stood out, a tall, imposing figure whose rigid posture and calculating gaze had intimidated subordinates and enemies alike for decades. The formal proceedings began with speeches from both sides, emphasizing the historic nature of the agreement and the scientific possibilities of studying Builder technology cooperatively. Throughout it all, Thorn maintained his professional demeanor, though he couldn't help noticing his father's eyes repeatedly drifting to Lara's pregnant form with an unreadable expression. After the official ceremony concluded and the reception shifted to more casual interaction, General Thorne finally approached them directly. "Mason," he acknowledged with a stiff nod before turning to Lara. "And you must be the remarkable Lara Tavani I've heard so much about. Your actions have caused quite the upheaval in Concord politics." "Necessary upheaval, General," Lara replied diplomatically. "Sometimes systems require disruption to evolve." The older Thorne's expression softened slightly. "Indeed. The Concord Council has been overdue for evolution." He hesitated, then added more quietly, "as have some of its more stubborn military officers." Mason recognized the closest thing to an apology his father was capable of offering. "Change seems to be the one constant in the galaxy these days," he replied, accepting the olive branch in equally indirect terms. The general's eyes moved to Lara's pregnant belly. "I understand congratulations are in order. The first human Verdante child. A remarkable development." "Thank you," Lara said, placing a protective hand over her abdomen. "We're told the child will carry genetic advantages from both species, Verdante sensory capabilities and human adaptability. The child will be granted dual citizenship," the general noted. "Another first. The Concord Medical Division has requested permission to document the development, for scientific purposes only." "Of course." Thorne tensed, but Lara placed a calming hand on his arm. "We've already established protocols for limited medical data sharing," she explained smoothly, "with appropriate privacy safeguards in place." The general nodded approvingly. "Sensible." He turned to his son. "Your mother asked me to extend her congratulations as well. She would like to visit, when circumstances permit." This was unexpected. Thorne's mother, a brilliant xenoanthropologist, had separated from his father years ago due to irreconcilable differences regarding Concord's alien policies. That she would express interest in visiting Nexus Prime and acknowledging her half-Verdante grandchild was significant. "She would be welcome," Thorne replied, genuinely pleased by the prospect. "Her expertise would be valuable to the research teams here." As the reception continued around them, Thorne found himself reflecting on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. A simple bounty hunt had transformed into a mission to prevent genocide, which had in turn evolved into the creation of an unprecedented sanctuary and diplomatic breakthrough. And somehow, amidst all the chaos and danger, he had found something he never knew he was missing: purpose, connection, and the promise of a family that transcended species boundaries. Lara, sensing his thoughts through the subtle bond they had developed, leaned against him slightly. "The builders would be pleased," she murmured. "Their greatest achievement wasn't their technology, but their vision of a galaxy where different forms of life collaborate rather than compete." Thorne watched as Verdante elders conversed with Concord scientists. Security personnel from both species coordinated their efforts, and the source tower pulsed with gentle blue light above them all. "Maybe we're finally catching up to their vision," he replied. The child within Lara's womb kicked suddenly, as if in agreement, causing both parents to smile. Whatever challenges the future held, they would face them together, human, Verdante, and the extraordinary new life they had created, pioneers of a connection that would change the galaxy forever. A new chapter was beginning, not just for them, but for all those who would follow the unexpected path they had forged through the heart of Nexus Prime.